So this is just one of several products that Nickel and Lace carries. And I started this business because I once found myself in a scary situation. And I know, speaking to other women, and we all know women who have been in similar situations where we need to protect ourselves or our children. And so I decided to design a product that would allow women to conceal carry discreetly on their body and for self-defense.
I'm Jody Carroll with another edition of Upstream Ideas, Heart of the Matter. According to a study from Pew Research Center, about 1 in 5 women in the U.S. report that they own a gun. While these women resemble their male counterparts in some respects, their views on and experiences with guns often differ from those of male gun owners. So how does gun ownership differ for women than for men? And how important is it to protect a law-abiding woman's right to carry? Joining me today to get to the heart of the matter are Marilyn Smolinski, the owner of Nickel and Lace, a company that designs concealed carry garments for women. A wife and mother of 2, Marilyn is running for state rep in Illinois House District 55, which includes parts of Des Plaines and Park Ridge. Babette Holder, president of the Illinois chapter of the Frederick Douglass Foundation. Babette is married and has 2 children. Babette and Marilyn, thank you for making the journey to my house to have this discussion on women and firearms. And I should just let you know, I have barely ever touched a gun, let alone owned one. But I think this is such an important subject because for me, it really highlights individual freedom for peaceful and law-abiding people like you two. You both own guns. So I want to start with the why behind that. Why is it that you ladies have a desire to own a gun? We'll start with you, Babette.
Well, mainly it is for protection and security for me, for my person, my family and household, and maybe possibly my neighbors in my community. And also is basically our fundamental right to protect and defend yourself. So that's the reason why I have a firearm.
Okay. Well, for me personally, there was once a point in my life where I did have to defend myself against a violent domestic partner. And sometimes women find themselves in the situation and we really want to have them prepared just in case. And that's not only why I have a firearm, but that's also why I started my business. I do have a holster business and I travel around and speak to different groups of women about learning different types of self-defense techniques to protect themselves and their children, also about their situational awareness and about avoidance techniques, but also about educating them on firearm safety.
You know, I would wager your story is not uncommon, and why a lot of women ultimately decide.
Right.
You know, that's one of the things in the back of my mind. You don't want to get to that moment where you say, I wish I would have.
Right.
And so I love talking. I would love to learn more.
And she brought up a good point real quick about the self-defense because I have a first-degree black belt, but we're still outpower, outman. There's not everything you can do. You know,
teach me a few things.
hand on hand, right? You know, and with a firearm, there's a situation where it's much faster and quicker than any of that training I found where they can rush you and take you, you know, at that point. But so, like I said, it does play into it, and women are at a disadvantage most of the time.
Yes.
Well, you know, and I've heard if you're waiting for law enforcement, you know, when seconds matter, police will be there in minutes. And I'm not saying anything negative about police. That's just the reality of you know how it is. Really, you have seconds to defend yourself.
And that's why a lot of police officers are pro-concealed carry. It's just that's also
they know
where
the realities.
Exactly. That's just where the education plays into it. If you're going to call the police and you do have your firearm for self-defense, then you need to know how to react once the police do arrive.
Absolutely.
And just follow the law.
So what do you say to the people who question a private citizen's right to own a gun? We've talked about the Second Amendment, but what do you say to those people who say you shouldn't have a right?
You know, Jody, I've done some speaking across this nation and in the past and even currently about their fundamental rights and the history of African Americans of being allowed to own a firearm and how that plays in for their security, and especially in large cities and urban areas.
Right, and I believe in the U.S. Constitution. I believe in the Second Amendment, and I believe that everyone deserves the right to be able to protect themselves and to protect their families. And I don't think anybody can disagree with that.
I should hope not. There's people who do. But so when mass shootings occur, like the one in Parkland, and you know, we watch it, there's a lot of political posturing that happens after that. For example, in Illinois, as you both know, the legislature, after the Parkland shooting, came out with a series of gun control bills. And Socialist State Senator Don Harmon managed to push through a licensing bill that would, with the help of 7 Minority Leader Jim Durkin's Republicans members to help push that through. So those 7 members, my question to you is, those Republican members, were they being reasonable or were they being political in that push following a tragedy?
You know, it's interesting, but looking at the fact, too, that it's midterms, re-election time for many.
Yes.
And some. And also, anytime, like you said, don't waste a crisis. I believe it's pandering to the constituents in their community with these political posturing, because a lot of this legislation doubles down on state and federal laws, as well as adding new features to create more hardship for those legal law-abiding firearm owners. That's just my opinion.
And doesn't even really get to the root of the problem.
Right.
Never let a crisis go to waste.
Right. And so whenever we're looking at these horrible tragedies like Parkland or Vegas or any of those, we do tend, like you said, to see more gun control legislation come up for vote right after, sometimes the next day.
Right.
And I just don't think that they give it enough time to think through what the actual problem is and how they should be addressing it. And my opponent, for example, Marty Moylan, I'm running for state representative in the 55th, and he is the incumbent. He used this to his advantage. I mean, he literally played on the emotions of people and used that to garner support for his bills.
And it's an emotional moment, so I get that, except it has to actually address the root cause of the problem.
Right.
So moving to that, staying on the school shootings, because it is an emotional, it's such a heightened moment. How do we speak to the whole concept of, we want our children to be safe in school, but you know what, we don't want to prevent these victims, in the zeal to prevent these victims, create other victims. How do we address that problem of protecting peaceful, law-abiding citizens from bad policy while also protecting our kids? What do we say to that?
Our children and our families, our safety, #1 priority, top priority. And I know and I believe that our resource officers are our absolute best first line of defense
What's
for
a
our
resource
children.
officer exactly?
So a resource officer is an armed officer, someone who is trained, an RSO, who will be inside of the school and protecting our children and our teachers and our
They
administration
needed that
and
in
parents.
the Parkland building when all those kids were locked in there with the shooter.
They did, and I believe someone was outside at the time. But we just recently had our own issue here in Illinois, and there was a resource officer who saved the lives of many children. And
Why is
was
that not national news?
It doesn't suit the narrative. It's really how that works. Yeah, resource officers. Chicago public schools have metal detectors. That's why you won't hear about this as much. And I'm hopeful. I'm not saying that they're 100% fail-proof, but also at the same time, I think we need to educate the general public because they have no idea, most of them really, what sort of firearm laws are already out there.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to add just really quickly too that the NRA has a great program called Eddie Eagle, and I know Damsel in Defense has books out for children about firearms, and there are so many different ways that you can speak to your children. And so if you want to reach out to those resources and look up different ways that you can speak to children at different levels, at different ages, that's really great.
Education.
Start education
I
at home
absolutely
and start
believe
it early.
education is the solution to nearly all problems.
And
certainly this is one of them.
And personal accountability and responsibility,
Yes.
because in several of these shootings with these schools, there's allegations of mental health crisis from that person, and allegedly family members were aware of this. So personal accountability and responsibility on making sure that your firearm does not get into the improper hands.
Thank you guys so much for this great discussion. I'd like to continue it if we could, and thank you for what you do. I mean, I'm glad that I have the freedom to tomorrow go do what I need to do to get myself concealed carry if I'd like. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining me today as we get to the heart of the matter. See you next time.